And welcome to the Dakota Housing Network. I am Greg Larson, along with
Dave Flohr
and Jim Walsh.
Hello.
Keeper of the buttons.
You were at the big event yesterday.
I was.
Yes.
I got to go stand in the hot sun. I forgot a hat.
I touched
You touched me.
Greatness.
Right.
Yeah.
here in
And
presence.
we had really good seats. We were just maybe 50 feet from them.
Oh, you're bragging now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was
that's
fun.
okay.
It was interesting. It doesn't matter who it is when you get to be there and hear a standing
Yes.
president speak.
Yeah. It's the
Whether you
president.
agree with their politics or not, it's the president of the United States. It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
And my nose will blister for it, and that's okay.
Okay. Well, we got a guest that we'll get on in here in
Right,
a little
he'll be
bit.
here
Oh,
shortly.
right.
And
Yeah.
so we're gonna have, and who is it, Greg?
It's Dave Flohr.
No, not me.
Dave.
I'm the host.
Dave
I'm the
Lamphere,
co-host.
I'm sorry. Dave Lamphere out of Fargo.
Yeah.
Dave is a good friend of mine, and we'll give him his bio when he's here, but he's the president of the North Dakota Association of Appraisers,
In addition to being a
addition
realtor.
to being a realtor. And
Yes.
so we will talk to him about all things appraisal.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk interest rates
Let's talk
first, then,
interest rates.
as we always do here.
A very interesting topic.
What, interest rates?
Yeah.
Well, they are. They were exciting this week, Jim.
Do tell.
They reached new 2017 lows for the second consecutive week.
New lows.
Ta-ra.
So we actually have something significant.
Now, that's a good thing, right?
That's
or
a
is
good.
it?
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
for most people, they would say that is a good thing. Mm-hmm. The 10-year Treasury yield fell 9 basis points this week, reached a new 2017 low for a second consecutive week. The 30-year mortgage rate also followed that, dropped 4 basis points to a year-to-date low of 3.78%. The 15-year fixed-rate mortgage is chomping at the bit of hitting 3% or below.
Wow.
It's at 3.08 for the week ending
It's
today.
actually lower than an adjustable rate.
Yes, the adjustable, the 5-year ARM is at 3.15.
Huh.
So
Amazing.
go figure. What would you do if you had the choice?
Well, I think I'd go with the 15-year fixed.
You think?
Yeah,
Yeah, that would
I
be
don't
a
think
good
that'd
choice.
Be a problem for me.
You know, the adjustable rate mortgages have an interesting dilemma at the moment because they're getting rid of LIBOR, which is the London Interbank Offer Rate.
Okay, if you say so.
And a lot of interest rates are based on that as an index, and
Okay.
they're going to get rid of that. I think it's in 2019 or 2020. They're going to have to switch to a different index, and right now they have no idea what the banks will decide on for an index and how that will affect people with adjustable rate mortgages. You could find that your rates go up a little bit more than you thought they might.
So keep an eye on that.
Even if rates are still where they're at now, depending upon the index that's chosen, it could go higher just because they just had to switch indexes. LIBOR got in trouble. They found out that the banks were manipulating the rate rather than actually using actual rates. They were kind of manipulating it because actually it was based on how they traded with each other or what they would pay each other, and they don't do that sort of thing anymore. So they decided they should get rid of it. And but there's still some debate about what's going to replace it, which would have an effect on the adjustable rate mortgages. So one more reason why take the lower 15-year fixed rate versus the 5-year ARM. It would be much better. So
yeah.
just additional work there. All right. So anyway, interest rates continue to go down. It's why? It's a lot to do with what's going on in the world. You've got obviously tax reform is part of this equation. What's going to happen with that? I think people probably are feeling confident, and they are still putting money into the equity markets, which is going to drive money out of the bond market. So there's not as much demand, and interest rates are coming down. So it's all good, I guess.
Yeah,
at
we'll
the
see.
moment, we'll see
Right.
what Mr. Trump obviously talked about his tax reform plan yesterday, and
Yep.
I think it sounded like he made a pretty good pitch for it. Certainly a receptive audience here in North Dakota
Right.
to that. And he needs. He talked about working with the Democrats and let's get something bipartisan put together here and let's get this done. And I think it's a message people here certainly want to hear.
Right.
And we're happy to hear it.
Well, what he talked about will help me as a realtor. I'm an independent contractor,
Yeah.
self-employed, and some of the things he talked about would be to my advantage.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
yeah. I think he had our friends mentioned North Dakota Guarantee and Title even, didn't
right.
he?
Yeah.
Nick
Called him
Hacker,
out.
and said how much money they have to spend on accountants to get
Right.
through the tax code. Yeah. Well, there's you.
Yeah.
Any small business person, you kind of wonder what's
Yeah.
the average money spent by a small business on accounting fees.
Correct. Yeah.
I don't know what that answer is, but it's probably more than we think it should be.
Well, I know what I spend, and I don't attempt to do my own taxes simply because of the 10-9s and
I can only imagine.
different stuff. Plus, we have small incomes from other areas, and so for me, I just have someone prepare it, so I know I'm not going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
I got audited once.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, you're still here to tell about it. So
way back in the day, I got audited, and I took my stuff in, and we went through it, and we talked about it, and it turned out the IRS owed me $400.
awesome. Now, did that make your day or what?
It did. I'll tell you, I was I
Wow.
think late 20s, early 30s, right? I mean, it's that long ago.
Go, yes.
But I'll tell you, that's a grinding feeling in the old gut when you're going to go see an IRS auditor.
I can only
the
imagine.
letter will get you going.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
And I went in, and he went all through it. And he was a nice guy. He really was, very friendly. And he went through it, and he said, we don't know that there's anything with your return. You are a random selection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he went and went through all
It
that
happens.
stuff. Yeah. Well,
It's like jury duty.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, they'll pick your name.
yep. So I got audited, and we went through it, and they owed me some money. And he said, now, here's how you get out of this, because once you're audited on a random selection, it's 3 or 4 years in a row that they pull
Okay.
you up.
Oh.
Because they track
How you're doing.
what you're doing, how things look.
Ah, okay.
Right. And so he said, have someone prepare your taxes next year. Have
Yeah.
a tax preparer do it, and you go off the list.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I did that, and I haven't.
And keep your
Because
nose
you have-
clean, which I'm sure is not a problem.
No. It's
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if that still applies. If you
I don't
as a
know.
personal person, if you got audited, then
I don't know. This was all,
still do it.
pretty much pre-computer. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little different.
yeah.
There's a classic Jack Benny show from the radio era where he had a meeting with the IRS. And, of course, they did a whole hour of the Jack Benny cheapskate jokes. But everything
Yeah.
worked out for him.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. Congratulations. You got through an audit, and they owed you money. I mean,
Yeah.
you
That's
couldn't ask
cool.
for more than that.
And as we're going to break here, I'll just tell you, my family's breathing a little easier. We have a cousin who lives on St. Croix in the Virgin Islands.
Oh, yes.
And we've been kind of biting our lip, and it sounds like things went fairly north of them, and they're okay. All the communication lines are down, so we haven't heard since before Irma was coming, but
Yeah.
we're
Well, I
thinking
heard-
the way the track that it looked okay.
I heard of a new island today that got wiped out, apparently. Barbuda?
Barbuda?
Barbuda was apparently 95% of the buildings were destroyed.
Wow.
about that, too.
Yeah, they were. I'd never heard of the island
Me either.
before.
I've heard of Barbados. I've heard of Bermuda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was Barbuda.
Yeah.
It was Barbuda.
Okay,
I
since we
remember
had
that.
this lady in concert here this week, we're going to feature Bonnie Raitt.
Yeah.
And we'll go to the break with Bonnie.
Here's Sean Hannity, weekday afternoons on Super Talk 1270.
And we are back, coming back with Bonnie Raitt. I'm here, Greg Larson, along with
Dave
Dave
Flohr.
Flohr and Jim Walsh, and we have on the air our special friend Dave Lanfear from Fargo. How are you, Dave?
I'm doing well, Greg. Glad to be here.
Good. Dave is a good friend of mine. He's a realtor in Fargo. He's been, man, Dave, what office haven't you held? He's former North Dakota State President of the NDAR, local president, Realtor of the Year, King of Siam,
I didn't know that one.
and you've been
Yeah, that's new to me.
and lots of stuff with since he's right on the Minnesota-North Dakota border. Dave, you've been involved with the stuff in Minnesota as well,
That's correct.
and occasionally he sells a house.
Occasionally?
No.
Occasionally he
keep
sells a
living.
house.
All right.
But Dave, you are also you are the citizen member of the North Dakota Association of Appraisers, and as such, you're its president. Is that correct?
Actually, it's not the Association of Realtors. That's
That's right. It is
that's
the
their group. It's it's the appraisal board, which is the government entity that does licensing for appraisers and deals with complaints or allegations arising from appraisal issues.
So you are the long arm of the law.
Well, I don't know with that, but yeah, we kind of enforce the rules and that with appraisers. Yeah.
And you are appointed by the governor, correct?
I am.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So he's,
I'm telling you,
top shelf here.
Dave's top shelf.
Okay, so that's what we got, folks.
Okay, so we're going to talk about appraisal issues, Dave, and anything else you want to talk about. But North Dakota, there's a complaint, and it's not really a complaint. It's just a fact that we're probably short a number of appraisers from what we should have, and that's nationwide, isn't it? I mean, that's kind of an issue.
Well, I also sit on the National Association of Realtors National Committee for appraisers, and it's all about a viewpoint. So there are lots of appraisers, and so depending on who you talk to, there's a shortage. Sometimes there's a shortage of appraisers who will take certain kinds of appraisals.
Okay.
Some appraisers aren't taking FHA appraisals anymore because of the extra regulations that come with that. They just don't want the added liability or the added regulation that comes with some of those appraisals. So the federal government says, yeah, you have plenty of appraisals, but on the other hand, not all appraisers want to take on that kind of workload with some of the new rules that are in place. So kind of a tug of war there. And the actual issue, I think, in North Dakota is that there's a shortage of appraisers that in our rural communities to take on the workload. That is much more prevalent in smaller communities than it probably is in the bigger cities in North Dakota. I don't hear the complaints about the shortage in Bismarck or Fargo or Grand Forks. You hear it coming from the smaller communities in the area.
No, I have, Dave. I've got a thing. This comes from, I think, an appraiser association and Adam Data Solutions, and it shows, it goes back to like 2000, and it shows how many originated mortgages compared to active appraiser credentials, and it really backs up what you're just saying. Is it depends upon your viewpoint. Back in 2000, there were lesser originated mortgages than there was in a higher number of active appraiser credentials, and that's right now there's less mortgages again in 2016 than there are active appraisers. It's just how the number of mortgages compared to the number of appraisers is back to where it was before the big boom in business back in the 2000s where everything went crazy. So that kind of backs up what you said. It depends upon your viewpoint on whether there's a shortage.
Yeah, and the federal regulations have also increased what kind of certifications you have to do certain kinds of appraisals. So there's in North Dakota, there's your licensed appraiser level 1, and then to do certain kinds of loans, you have to be a certified residential appraiser, and to do that loan, or you have to be a certified general appraiser, which is the highest level to do certain kinds of commercial work. So that also comes into play in terms of who's available to do the work. So, and they're trying to figure out on even registries if they're truly counting everybody once, or are they counting some people twice to get accurate counts? Because appraisers are licensed in multiple states typically.
Okay.
Sure, especially Fargo area, there's going to be people that are both North Dakota, Minnesota. Yeah.
Well, we have people coming from, like on the appraisal board, we typically offer reciprocal licenses to people because they meet all the criteria. Because licensing criteria are national standards, not state standards. So there's a minimum national standard, and if they meet that, we give a reciprocal license. So we have people from Texas or California or Pennsylvania or Wisconsin that come in, and we offer them a reciprocal license to work in the state of North Dakota. So, so you can be licensed and be in Wisconsin, but hold a license in Illinois, North Dakota, New York, Indiana. You can have all these different licensures. So it's how everybody's being counted.
Yeah.
Come up with an accurate number. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
It's a challenge.
Yeah. So, do you think? So, really, what you go back to what you were talking about before too, where Bismarck, Fargo, Grand Forks, probably not an appraiser shortage as far as getting the work done within those communities. But asking somebody to drive out to Peasic, North Dakota, presents a problem. And is
Correct.
that because they can't get paid enough by, if they're going through an appraisal management company, are they not able to get paid enough to say, well, I'm not going to drive out there for what I'm going to get paid?
Yeah, and that's, the challenge with the new regulations is the appraisal management companies are involved, and it's just finding someone willing to take the assignment and then do it timely based on the contract. Because, people write contracts with a closing date, and then so that the agents have to be aware that maybe in Peasic, wherever that is, you can't do a 30-day close if the appraiser can't get there for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Kind of a deal. And that's what I run into. That's what people call me on. And, we have a delayed closing because the appraiser didn't do their work. But we look at, and they'll file a allegation about something, and then when we look at the paper trail from the AMC to the appraiser, it was clear, and he accepted the assignment, that this was when he would have it back, which may have nothing to do with the contract date because of how he agreed to do it. So this communication is the key in all these, because if people stop communicating, that's when the consumer gets mad.
Yeah.
True enough.
So that's why when somebody calls me or I try to reach out to an appraiser, just tell me what your real date is for closing or when you'll have it really done. Because we can adjust the closing date. We can change all that if we know ahead of time, not a week before closing and you've disappeared and you won't answer anybody's phone calls. Just communication, even if it's not what I want to hear, I can deal with that, or any agent can deal with that if we know far enough in advance how to prepare all our clients along the way.
Yeah, that's true, Dave. That's a big part of it. We're headed up on a break here in just a minute, but I want to just follow up on that. Just a personal experience right now. We have a VA loan that I'm involved with, and I have the buyer, so the one getting the loan. And when we wrote the offer, we said this is a VA loan, and we don't know, how long it's going to take. We put a closing date down, made a note on the contract. It's subject to change because of it's a VA loan. We know they're going to take a little bit longer. And then we got going, and all of a sudden, we are 8 weeks out from when anyone can get there and do a VA appraisal. And so nobody should have been upset, but of course they are until they get it settled. But that's kind of what you're talking about, right, Dave?
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's exactly what we're talking about. It's just communicating. There's this there's this idea that the appraiser can't talk to anybody in the
Right.
transaction. Well, that's really not true. I mean, he can, if somebody calls him, like the agent calls him and asks for the due date, like when are you going to be done?
Right.
He can answer that question, or she can answer that question.
Dave, I'm going to
And not-
rudely interrupt you here because we're
So,
going to
go
a
ahead.
break, and we'll finish. We'll keep this going on the other side. Thanks.
You always interrupt me, Greg. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's
used to
true.
that.
And we'll see you in a minute.
Dave Ramsey is heard here. Super Talk 1270.
And we are back with Dave Flohr. I'm Greg Larson on the Dakota Housing Network, and we're here with our special guest, Dave Lanfear. Hi, Dave.
Big deal, Dave.
Big deal, Dave.
That's we're going to call him that. We get him back on again. We're going to
Sure,
call him
Big Deal Dave. Okay, I like that.
Big deal. Okay.
Yeah. He's big.
My
He's
ego.
president
We'll
of
get
this
you.
and president of
Yeah,
that.
no
and
kidding. Well, he is that. He's
Pointed
very,
and
he's very committed to his industry.
Yes,
and
he
that's,
is.
That's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
We should get your license plate. Big deal. Triple D. Or BD Dave. Big deal Dave.
Dave, I will not steal that from you.
It now sounds like
Okay.
we're
Give
selling,
that to you.
It sounds like we're selling used cars in Alabama.
It
This
does.
is Big Deal Dave.
Well,
Calm down.
I don't want to sell used cars in Alabama, that's for sure.
Okay, so when we went to the break, Dave, we were talking about the difficulty of timing and communication and that stuff with appraisals. Becoming an appraiser is not an easy thing, as I recall. There's a lot of internship and study that has to go into that. Plus, I would guess you have to pass a test or two. Is that?
That's correct.
No,
So,
what do you have to do to become an appraiser?
Just say,
Well-
I are an appraiser.
there's a lot of education. And off the top of my head, I don't know how many hours, but it's way more than to become a licensed real estate agent or broker.
I think it's
all
like
that stuff. But
2,000.
the real issue, you have to have 2,000 hours of on experience to get your license.
So you work under another appraiser for basically.
And that's a lot. When you start to think about that, that's a lot of hours.
Yeah, that's well, at a 40-hour week, it's 2,080 hours a year, and so that would be a
Take
full
it.
year, full time. to do
Yeah, and the question in our area is most of the appraisal companies in our area are small groups of or small family-owned businesses, so they're not like big appraisal companies like you get in major markets. They're small groups, maybe 2 or 3. And are you willing to take on and maybe pay somebody who can be your competition when they are completed?
Okay, so you've got literally 2,000 hours of internship after, I think it's a couple hundred hours of education at least,
Yeah,
and successfully passing
exactly.
a test, and then finding someone who will let you intern with them.
Yeah. And when you get licensed, I mean, you have to submit work. In the process there, you have to submit work product to the appraisal board, which we have reviewed, and then you have to sit in a meeting with us for your licensing.
Oh, boy.
So, it's way more challenging process to become an appraiser than it is to get your real estate license. To get my license or my broker's license is I took my hours, I took my test, and, the real estate commission said, "Yay, you're great. Here's your license." I didn't have to show any competency that I could actually do the work.
Have you
in
since?
the appraisal world, you have to show competency to do the work
Yeah.
for us to give you a license.
Okay, we should maybe just go back to basics, Dave. What is an appraiser? We've got an audience out here that might say, what is an appraiser and why do we need one? And so, can you touch on that?
Yeah. An appraiser is the person in a real estate transaction that works on testing the value of the property. So they do all the work to make sure, on behalf of the bank, not the consumer, on behalf of the lender, that the home, the property, has the value that the buyer is willing to pay for it.
Okay, so
in simple senses.
And in simple
That's
terms,
what
if
they
you're
do.
buying a car, they refer to the blue book to see if the car is worth it. We don't have a blue book in real estate. We have a realtor or an appraiser, and so we rely on the appraiser to be the blue book. Is that kind of the...
Well, yeah, except that you get a 36-page document that validates, their...
Right.
How they view it is they create a problem. Here's the problem. I have a purchase agreement that says that this home is worth $200,000. Now I've got to solve the problem with my data, with comparable sales, with the market conditions, with, all these different factors. And based on their problem solving, they come up with the answer. Yeah, it's worth 200. Oh, no, but oh, really, it's only worth 190, or it might be worth 205, whatever it falls within that. And they are the independent person looking at the transaction to come up with the value. That's why, with all the new laws coming out of Dodd-Frank, that's why you have the AMC. So the lender doesn't directly have a relationship with that appraiser. The seller doesn't get to pick it. The buyer doesn't get to pick it. It's a arm's length person in the appraisal management company that selects the appraiser to show the value of the property. It just gets complicated on some days.
Yeah.
When you're trying to, figure out what you're doing.
Yeah, and then we talk about comparable values, and we're talking once again about these small towns, where it's pretty tough to go out to Pizik, since we'll pick on Pizik.
You don't know where Pizik is at, Dave?
Seriously, it's probably north.
Well, you're in Fargo. Say northwest. You got it.
Right?
It's north of Grand Forks.
Actually, I think we had a complaint on an appraiser that appraised a property in there at one point, and the issue was he did he have geographic competency to do that appraisal because of the location.
Yeah. Well, Pizik's north of Grand Forks, and it's probably 100 people.
If
and
probably 20 homes.
Yeah. So ironically, you think, well, that'd be easy to do, but that's probably more technical. That's more challenging than doing one in Fargo.
Yeah, that's isn't it true, Dave? The unique houses are the ones that cause the problems. A couple of years ago, I was involved in a log house, and it was just really tough to get the loan approved because there was nothing to compare it to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
unique properties are always the challenge, and that's why the appraiser, and that's actually a national issue because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are trying to say, hey, we have this new system that will be more automated, and we'll take all the easy ones and just do them with automated appraisals, so we don't really need an appraiser, but we'll let the appraisers do all the hard ones.
Automated
that would be more unique.
Right.
And the appraisers are really pushing back on that, saying, of course you want all the easy stuff because that's easy, but you don't get to pick and choose which ones you get to be automated. Either we want them all or that's a really interesting discussion they're having nationally on those issues because anybody, like in Fargo, there's like hundreds of these little twin homes that sell for about $175, and there's like all the counts for them. Well, Fannie Mae could say, well, we don't need an appraisal on those because we already have so much history that we know they are all worth $175 or in that range. So we don't need to hire an appraiser to test the value of that.
Boy, that would work right up until it doesn't.
Yeah, well, it's kind of
Exactly.
like,
That's
how
what the appraisers are pushing back.
how could they have kept up with Western North Dakota,
Right.
5 years ago with
Right.
that approach?
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is all the pushback that in a changing market that had been red hot, but now it's cooling off.
Yeah.
How does that work? Or in a market that's heating up, because appraisers are always backward looking, not forward looking, typically in a market.
Yeah, it's not a
That's a
good
challenge.
predictor of where the prices are going to be. Okay,
No.
Dave, we have one more break, and we will come back and talk with you some more. Thank you.
The Red River Farm Network. Ag News is here on Super Talk 1270.
And we are back with Dave Lanfear, our special guest out of Fargo. Hello again, Dave.
Hello?
And this is the Dakota Housing Network. There goes my radio voice and image right down the tubes.
Does it?
So, Dave,
You're
there's a blog that the National Association of Realtors has, and they talk about appraisal issues. One of the things they talked about was the potential of drones becoming a real valuable tool for appraisers. Have you heard that?
I really have not heard anything about that in any of the meetings that I've sat through with NAR. That's
Okay.
not been our topic. Our topic has been all about new valuation systems that they're really unhappy with. Yeah, so that's kind of their hot topic right now.
Well, we talked about it. Drones, great for exterior, but the interior
Yeah.
inspection would be a little tough
Real rugged.
Yeah,
for drones. Yeah.
yeah. Watch that crystal chandelier.
There you
We're
go.
just
Yeah.
sorry about the lamp.
A
lady.
whole new liability issue just opened up if you
Yeah.
do that. Well, so what's the valuation models? Talk a little bit about that. What's the big talk there?
Well, they're just how everything is moving to AVMs, automated valuation models, and because they now are getting so much data from sold data from different locations that they just kind of they want to be able to use it. And so Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac primarily are saying, we have all this data, why don't we just make it simpler, speed up transactions that don't need the physical presence of an appraiser within it. And so they're trying to write new rules and new things that will allow banks and lenders to say, if it meets all these criteria, there's no need for an appraisal. Based on, credit scoring and loan to value and the type of home, then we wouldn't need an appraisal
Yeah.
for that property and have it and be sold on the secondary market. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Fannie Mae would then be able to buy that.
So,
Buy that loan.
we just touched on it before the break. Was how would that handle a market like Williston, North Dakota, or Watford City that went sky high, and now has come down some. How do you keep up with that? Somebody somewhere in that mix is going to buy a house for too much, or they're going to get stung on the back end by too much, probably.
Right.
It just seems all the data is wonderful and all that, but it's like they're just trying to cut costs out of the transactions almost.
Well, everybody's, and part of that is driven by consumers who want to close more quickly on their homes, and people are we create our own monsters in that because we want things to happen more quickly in this age. No one likes to wait. How can we speed up a transaction? So I think all of that plays into that, but appraisers also are just looking to keep their model and their value, and I agree with them. We don't want to be go back to 2008 when there were all kinds of crazy things happening because of deregulation of those markets, which I think could be happening again by what I'm seeing on the federal level. So we don't want to go back to the old days because the old days were bad. We forget that. That's what caused the crisis.
Yeah, I agree with
back
that.
in the day. I mean, our memories are short on that.
Way
had
back
other
when we
real
were
big problems.
whippersnappers.
Yeah. 10 years ago.
So,
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. You know, every time I've been upset with an appraiser, it's because they told the truth and I didn't want to hear it. You know, I mean, evaluation was too low or whatever, and then you get into it, and they're pretty much right, and I was pretty much wrong. So I can't find a fault with the appraisal issue, but I can't imagine as a lender. I mean, here I've got a consultant who will prove the value, will, if you will, collateralize my loan. Why would I want to not do that?
I mean, I think lenders, to get comfortable with the fact that all you're using is these data points out there to make that determination is going to be, that'll be a tough one to get over too.
Yeah, so Dave Flohr, you're with North Dakota Housing Finance. You do a lot of first-time home buyers. Are you really excited about
No.
guaranteeing a loan that has not been appraised?
No, I have a concern. I mean, you'd have to really look closely at what are they using to determine that, and that's going to work. The fact that the person's a great borrower, they got a great credit score and all that stuff, that's all wonderful, but, what is the market like? And for us to rely on data points that Fannie and Freddie Mac have collected, in Chicago and D.C. or wherever they're at, I don't know. I mean, how do they know what the market is doing in Fargo or Bismarck or wherever in North Dakota at any moment in time?
Yeah, and we do have some history of what they're talking about doing, and I'm not casting aspersions, but, Zillow has their estimates, right?
Yeah,
Dave Lanfer. And they just take a large snapshot and look at everything in that area. They don't do any comps to compare a house to a house.
No.
And they come up with their number. And it's kind of a good tool to target a home value, but it doesn't make a home value.
I went out and got my Zillow Zestimate thing, just curiosity to look. I don't have one.
You don't have a Zestimate?
I don't have a Zestimate.
I'm
on my
sorry.
house. My neighbors do.
They have medication for that, I think.
My neighbors do, and it says, a house recently sold, whatever. No, it didn't sell.
Yeah.
The people have been living there for like 8 years next to me. I know them.
Yeah. And again, we're not bad-mouthing Zillow, but I mean, that's a fair example of what might happen, right? Dave Lanfer, not Dave Flohr.
And I think, in North Dakota, Zillow doesn't work as well as it may in other markets because of how primarily North Dakota doesn't publish sold data or give that data readily away.
Right.
Like in other communities, it's more readily available. But, a lot of real estate companies have their own AVMs on their sites. That's a big deal nationally. So
get your opinion on
I think
this.
it's coming. I think, change is hard.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And,
yeah.
But it's how to manage that so that we still give the consumer and protect the consumer's interests within the transaction. Is there a way to do that so the consumer doesn't get taken advantage of within the transaction? Because that's my concern.
No,
I don't care about the rules. I do care about the rules, but I don't. Whatever the model is the consumer going to be protected?
Correct.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's going to get a loan in a home that's the correct value for that loan.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Exactly.
And I think there's ways to do that, and we just got to be sure that as we employ new technologies, that we don't lose sight of who we are really trying to protect. And that is not the appraisers, and that is not Fannie Mae. That is the consumer who is taking out the mortgage and going to pay it, and in a changing market. That's who we
well
need
said.
to protect.
Yep.
And
Well
not
said,
the
Dave.
banks.
Well said, Dave.
As we wrap up here, I will just tell
Yeah.
you that I know Dave Lanfear very well, and he means exactly that when he says it, because I've seen him stand up and defend that. So, Dave, we're about done here. I wish I could say I'll see you next week in Aberdeen. You and Dave Flohr
I'll be there,
can
Dave.
see each other. I'm being
Unfortunately, I'm not
forced to
attending
go to
the convention
Reno.
This year,
Oh, you're
not-
but,
you're not either.
You're
but
not
I'll
there?
see you soon, Greg.
All right. Yeah, I'll see. I'm being forced to go to Reno. This will be the first one I miss. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on,
Reno.
Dave.
We really
Okay.
appreciate it, Dave. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. This
All
is
right.
Dave Lanfear, king of the world of Siam.
Big deal, Dave.
and big
That's what I'm
deal
calling
Dave.
him.
If you want a deal, go down and see Dave. Park Company,
Thank you,
Fargo, North
Dave.
Dakota. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.